Yo, what's good? Welcome back. Not done a video for a little while, but I thought I'd come in with something like this just because, I've been trying to come up with ideas that I can do a little bit more on my own. I think this is very, very simple. Maybe we'll start doing more, opinion pieces. I think they can be hard to pull off, however, so we'll see. But with something like this, it's an event that I'm directly involved with. Goes hand in hand with the preview video that I made a couple months ago now, it would be, to be fair, which I'll link down below if you want to check that out, I suppose, see how correct I was with that tier list. But yeah, I've still got interviews coming up if you're usually here for that kind of stuff. If not, stick around for it. Some interesting characters over the next couple of weeks. But I've just been very, very busy, and therefore matching my schedule with other people's can be quite hard. So this is what I'm getting at, right? Like, I want to work on some solo stuff, so I've been coming up with some ideas, working on my editing, so I can facilitate those ideas, etc., etc. But look, last time out, I think it took a little bit long to get into the video, and then it ended up dragging on a little longer than I wanted. So without further ado, let's just, get straight into it here. Very, very simply, as you can see, lots of tabs open, right? So I've got all the teams. We'll just have a quick little overview. I will be honest and open about teams that maybe I've not had a chance to check in with over the course of the season. Obviously, I work on, other events and stuff, and I catch some of the teams in different tournaments. But for the most part, I think I'm pretty solid with where most of these teams are at. And then for every team, I have picked a player, one to watch, one to talk about, that has had a good run over the past few months. Couple of the teams, there's two players a little harder, to just pick one, as it were. But the quick overview of the teams, if you are not familiar, of course, things are starting tomorrow, or on the day of recording. I suppose on the day of uploading, it'll be a little bit later today. That's what I'm hoping for. So, yeah, a lot of games going on at the same time. I think there'll be a few of these open, right? But most people will be jumping in. There'll be casters on all of them. I am on this one, the Ex-Winstrike versus Ego, over on the B stream of things. So be sure, to check out. And then I would imagine, I feel like in terms of matchup, this one will be on the mainstream, but I can't really comment. Either way, these are where the teams are at. These are the playoff squads. This is the finishing placements, which there's a few interesting ones in here for me, right? So we see the likes of Forza are not in. Very, very surprising. They have, however, been on a bit of a downturn, changing some players around, trying to stabilize the roster and all that sort of stuff. Also, weirdly enough, have always seemed to underperform in MDL. They had like one season in Pro League or whatever, and then since then it's just kind of gone to pot. When it comes to Premier, I call it MDL. It's still stuck in there, but no, when it comes to Premier. The surprising one for me, though, is the likes of Apeks getting in here. We'll touch on it a little bit later on, but, with some of the moves that they've made, they were some of the Galaxy Racer players, I believe, who been in the same roster, the same lineup for years and years, it feels like, and they move out and now seem to have found a groove and doing relatively well in Premier. And the other side of things, this is pretty much how I expected it to go. I think I had Dark Horse like Sangal or something for a bit of fun. But yeah, these four teams, not a surprise. The remaining three teams over here, not too massive of a surprise. The Hellraisers project not really working out too well. Fate biting off a bit more than they could chew. So yeah, to be honest, the teams that have made it into playoffs, pretty much expected. I think Apeks is the big, I took a look and I was like, wow, okay, fair enough. Especially going like 6-2, they're fairly comfortable in there. And in the best of 3 formats, right? You've got to remember, it's not the best of ones anymore. Quick little look in here. You can see where everyone has placed. Singularity and Nexus, unfortunately, straight down. Nexus having a stonker, mate, not winning a single game. So certainly a tough one for them. But yeah, and then just a price kind of breakdown, I suppose. And obviously that Pro League spot is on offer every single season now, so that's really, really cool. Anyway, let's break into the teams in no particular order. I just kind of opened them how they are formatted on the playoff bracket there. So Ex-Winstrike, the first one's coming up. Obviously, organization-wise, it's a little awkward at the moment for these guys, but they have been making a mark. They've really been playing well. As you can just see from your very, very basic past 5 games, taking down EG, who, yes, indeed, are on a poor run of form, but still nothing to shake a stick at, as they say, right? And then losing out to Mousesports in the same tournament. I think it was the Snow Sweet Snow, losing in the grand finals. So coming second there, and there are a few decent teams in the runnings. Harvey's another one to watch, by the way. They're not in Premier this season, but I think we'll probably be seeing them soon. And they are looking really good, having picked up some of the Finnish players that dropped out from Ents. You can kind of see maybe the map pool looks a little thin, I guess. We don't have all the stats here, but there's certainly a couple maps that you could take them on if you do your research, if you do your work. But, and this is a big but as I move on to the next tab, this guy, Elian, is unstoppable at the moment. And honestly, I'm not going to go through all the numbers for all the players because we'd be here forever, right? But yes, he's 1.27, and that's been fairly consistent past 3 months, sure, but it goes a little further back, probably for like the past 5, maybe 6 months, honestly. He's been on that kind of run of form. But he's also supported relatively well by the rest of the team. It's not like it's a one-man show, and I think that's why Ex-Winstrike are doing so well. This is your, simple element, but there's no flamey on this team. I mean, we'll keep it at that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there seems to be a good amount of support. Now, when it comes to higher caliber, EG, okay, they take them. Mousesports, not so much. So, and Havu, as you saw there, in your past 5 kind of thing. Again, very, very basic, but it does speak to, I think certainly there is going to be a ceiling hit here. You can even see, hey, I didn't even notice this, but beautiful stuff. HLTV coming in, he's had a great week, apparently. So, and despite that, they have been losing. So maybe, indeed, the jig is up ever so slightly, but we'll see. Their opening game tomorrow is up against Ego. Like I said, that's the one that I believe I'm going to be covering. So, should be a hell of a lot of fun. And I feel like Ego are a team that they can take down relatively comfortably. But, yeah, this guy is very, very scary within this level. CIS region, Russia, CIS region, Orpa, Young, he's got everything going at the moment. And I really do hope that the Winstrike boys get picked up by a decent organization. They've got a lot of potential together. Saw up next then. This is a team, like I said, I'm not surprised that they're there. They're in the top 30. But this is a team that had a lot of hype around them towards the tail end of last year, moving into your dream hacks and stuff like that. They came second in Open December, I believe. But since then, they've kind of plateaued off a bit. Maybe if they keep on the grind, they could hit the 20. But it's a difficult one. At the peak of the Portuguese scene at the moment, I personally don't really know if they would want to make a change to try and facilitate pushing to another level. And then there is also the question of who do you get, right? Again, I'm not ear to the ground on the Portuguese scene, so I wouldn't quite know. Do you maybe pull some of the Spanish players, but obviously we've seen some of those go across to Valorant and stuff like that. So a little harder for them to maybe adjust, so they have to do a lot of stuff internally. And yeah, you can see these two. Again, it's very, very basic, right? Don't get me wrong. I'll hold my hands up here. It's not like super deep analysis, okay, guys? But I feel like if you're trying to move up, if you're trying to do well, if we just have a quick check of where these teams are placed at the moment. Copenhagen Flames are doing relatively well, but I think K23 are on a weird sort of position at the moment, trying to figure themselves out, even Adren coming back in. So, yeah, I don't know. It's like if you're trying to push to that next level, maybe losing to these guys is not ideal. Does depend. We've just had a very quick look there. It does depend on context and maps and all that kind of stuff. But I think they're out and out the best team within their region, within like the Iberian, Spanish, Portuguese region. that much is testament. They're off to blast, the Spring Showdown, because they won the LVP Unity Cup, I believe it was called. But I don't know. I think so far for me, unless something changes, unless they have a big upsurge or an adjustment within the team, I think we might have seen the best of this squad, to be honest. That's not to say that they can't perform well within Premier playoffs. I could see them hitting a top 4. I think their opening matchup against Anonymo, definitely doable. But certainly, I don't know how. I can't shoe them in for top spot, that kind of thing. And you can see again, they do play every map here, so that's kind of cool. That's a good factor to have, but that does leave you open a little bit. But particularly against, as we'll probably go and touch on, a team like Anonymo, I think that does allow them a lot of options for sure when it comes to the veto. Moving forwards, though, looking at the individual, I'm conscious of the time here. We're already like 10 minutes in, so I think I'm going to start speedrunning a little bit more. Studodo, big man on the AWP. This guy has always been impressive for them, continues to be so. Not much more to say, to be honest with you. They try and play around him, they try and facilitate him as much as they possibly can. However, where they do fall down from time to time is maybe relying on him a little bit too much. If he doesn't show up, it's difficult to get a plan B going without this guy, to be honest with you. So, Apeks, this is a team that I talked about being a bit of a surprise factor in the best of threes as well. Potential dark horse here. Now, still moving up, they spam the tournaments out. Another team that kind of just plays every map. I think there's potential. I would certainly, say with the way that they've been performing and the fact that you have to look, obviously we're moving into playoffs here. They've already been playing best of threes. Sure, they've not played the Group B teams, but they got 6 wins within Group A. So surely they've already proven themselves a little bit against some of these teams. But we'll see. We'll see. Like, who are NLG? No offense to those guys, but they and then like some of these teams here I don't really recognize, and I think they're one of these teams. They are quite selective with the tournaments that they play. And sometimes they have some very bad habits as well. I don't know if it still sticks in the team recently, but I remember a couple months ago watching them, and some of the economic decisions are a little out there, so kind of wacky. But it definitely seems like these moves are good for them, and it's given them a bit of a honeymoon resurgence kind of vibe. Relaxer seems to be the big man on campus in terms of those raw statistics. Does make sense. Little older, of course, the twins. Always fun to watch. And as I mentioned, Relaxer and Freddy Frog had been in that Galaxy Racer, different iterations of, but, names, organizations, but the same like 4 or 5 players had been playing together for like at least a year and a half, it feels like. And then they go and they make a change, and things are looking up. Things are looking good. Little older, for sure, but I think there's a lot of experience on this lineup, and they're really looking solid in that sense. Moving on then to Wisla Krakow, or I believe Wisla Krakow, I believe is how you say it, if we're being honourable to them. As I've touched on many, many times, and it does come up when you're being a little bit analytical, Polish scene, team is there. These guys are looking like it. They're battling on, moving up. Again, another team that are very selective with their tournaments. As you can see, some decent pickups here. Extremum, well-known names, current form. Whack, to be frank. Sprout, though, is a good one because they are within that same kind of tier, that same kind of level. They know each other relatively well. Again, another team that are happy to play anything. There are definitely some weaker ones, but it does leave them open to exploiting your map pool, as it were. So the veto with this kind of team can be very, very scary. Easy to say. I think this is a name that a lot of people are starting to become familiar with. A lot of casters and watchers of the game ranting and raving about this guy. Really looks solid. Another similar kind of vibe to Saw, however. If he doesn't show up, it can be a bit harder. I want to say that Jedka is the player that sort of, supports him a little bit, it looks like. I did say I wasn't going to go through all the numbers here, but I'm pretty sure, I'll be confident with it. I'm pretty sure Jedka is the one that, maybe backs him up a little bit, and is the second man on the scoreboard kind of thing. But I think these guys have really got potential. I did say in my preview video, I remember putting them up as well, and I was a little apprehensive, but they've been looking good since the summer, sticking with this lineup. That for me is very, very solid, when the Polish scene definitely has had a few too many shuffles, in my opinion. You know what I mean? If you're trying to form a decent team, it seems sometimes there are a few of them. It's like opposite ends of the spectrum, actually, because we're going to touch on Ego, and that roster's been together, like the core of it, for a while. But it does seem like opposite ends of the spectrum, where you have some of the teams will stick together for ages, try and make the project work. They believe in the long term. Others, they'll play together for like 3 to 6 months. Some of it will go well. As soon as it starts to go wrong, okay, let's just rotate, and change things up. But definitely watch these guys. I think they could be very, very solid. Their opening matchup against Sprout as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think they might have a bit of a leg up there. But we'll see. We'll see. Sprout are a resilient team. And certainly will have done their prep for this, and certainly after like the past few seasons and whatnot of things not going their way in the end, they've come close many times to winning MDL when it was named such. So very, very cool, very, very cool team. Watch them, cool guy Hades. Moving on to Sprout. These guys, names been around for a while, as well as members of the team as well. Adding Cressy and Slacks more recently, going back to this solid German roster at the top of the season. Consistently inconsistent, that's the one that we always pin on it. Shout out to Jack Wolfie for that one. Great little phrase that he's come up with, and it's totally true, because they are their own worst enemies, absolutely. This is one of the teams that I had to pick 2 for, though. Faven, absolute beast, very, very young. Could be a bit of a stopgap for him, but you never know. We'll have to see. It always does feel like this Sprout project. They rotate players in and out, and, often they go out. Keto, Searson, that kind of thing. So it might be another case here for Faven. Grown up, getting the experience, learning from some legends of the scene, some very experienced guys. But for now, this guy is very, very scary. On the rifle, absolute beast. Then you also have Slacks. Now, the numbers, they're not super close, but I think it's worth bringing up that he looks way better here than he ever did on alternate attacks. And I think part of that is, again, because of the Sprout system and the way that they use him and facilitate him. So, 2 guys that are really, really scary. And the team in general, if we go back to it, looking at maps and all that kind of stuff, as you can see, very, very solid. So permaban the overpass and everything else, they can play relatively well. So always a top contender for me, but like I say, their own worst enemies, and some of those previous things, it all depends on how they deal with, last season coming so close. They were in the upper bracket, they go down 3-2 to Endpoint. It was a very, very tough final for them. Do they use that to spur them forwards, or does it, allow them to mull in their own thoughts? And some of the players, Dennis especially, man, like he's tweeted about it and everything, about how even it affects him kind of physically, his nerves and everything. So we'll have to see. Moving on to Nemiga. One of the wildest teams to watch. Recent games not so hot, but certainly so much individual prowess here. Still sticking in and around that top 30. Another team with a relatively solid map pool, but they are just hard to keep up with. They can be really, really difficult to play against if you're not on their level. It's that extra step of energy at the very least. They are a team that don't really have the ability to lower down the gears, and at the moment, the game is very, very slow. Much more thought out, much more methodical, and sometimes I think Nemiga can struggle to adapt to that, as you can see here again by their... And these are some relatively big teams like Ex-Winstrike, sure. Extremum got the experience. Spirit, born of the online Counter-Strike, will be very ready for Nemiga's style. So, but then you look at the likes of LDLC, another chaotic, fast, in-your-face team. They can win when it's on their terms, but I think it's hard to get the enemy team to play to their style, and I think that it is difficult for them to adapt within the game. So we'll see. Certainly within the realms of Premier, again though, could just outgun their opponents if they can get it on to maps that they like playing. You know, the Dust 2 especially could be very, very scary. So we'll have to see. In terms of the individuals, though, you got Idus Balance. You know the name. He was on Spirit for a time. Scary on the AWP. Always remains towards the top end of the scoreboard and pretty consistent in that way for me, certainly. So, and then I also had to include Lollipop 21k, probably the worst name in Counter-Strike, but well, in this level of Counter-Strike, I won't give him the title for the entire thing. But again, in terms of the numbers, very, very scary on the rifles. And these two guys, if they can get towards the top end, a little bit of support from the rest of the squad, they can just take over a game. So players to watch for sure. Anonymo. This is one of the teams I was talking about in the Polish scene that like to rotate things in and out. They have had a different, you know, 5th and 4th spot throughout the season. I think it's fair that they're here. I don't know about them being the best team in Poland. They're one of these teams that spam tournaments out as well, so sometimes can get a bit fatigued or pick up some bad habits. But definitely potential. I think, again, map pool might be something, as I was mentioning a bit earlier, that can be abused. Their opening game against Saw here, yeah, who are a team that, you know, have a very, very deep map pool. So it can be hard. Snacks, though, looking good. The big man, absolute legend. On the AWP, still very wacky to me, but he seems to be coming into it the past few months. There's also the support in from Kai, I believe, is the secondary player on this team, that also looks pretty good in terms of the numbers. I think it's good for them to be here, to be fair, making it in from Group B, right? But, you know, this group wasn't mega impressive. And I don't know, it's expected. They've not really exceeded the expectations that I had for them. But when I've watched them in the past, they're nothing really special. And sometimes they have like a wacky kind of play. I think they're all just very, very comfortable on some of the spots that they play, some of the maps that they play. But again, tough team. I've seen them have some very, very, some very, very weak performances. And then, you know, on the next map, just completely turn it around. Like I don't know. It can be very hard to predict what kind of Anonymo you're going to get. So we'll see. If they've put the work in, I think there's certainly potential. If they're just, you know, going through the motions, viewing it as another tournament, as it were, then I don't know. I think it might be hard for them, in all honesty. But we'll see. We'll see. You know, quietly kind of hopeful. Now that they're starting to mix with the Group A teams, I think that's where it gets a bit harder. Ego coming in, though. I think looking pretty good. You know, Snatchy coming back into the Polish scene. Rarland's been performing pretty well alongside him. I think he was the player that, you know, I picked out here. But Rarland's not too far behind. They do have some good individuals here. This, for me, is like, you know, the core of it, the way that the philosophy has been for this team. Very slow and thought out kind of play style. Relatively good CT side from what I remember, right? And looking pretty good at the moment. They're selective with the tournaments that they take part in, and it feels like they do a lot of work ahead of those tournaments and could be quite good at the anti-stratting and whatnot. I suppose, you know, maps-wise, there is a little bit more work to be done here. I think it's always quite hard to read into, though, because if I'm not mistaken, you know, some of these maps towards the bottom end, right, they're pretty much even. There's not like a terrible amount. I mean, there's a decent amount to go off of in terms of the numbers. So I think that Ego for me are, again, similar to Anonymo, but maybe a step above, right? There's nothing too special about them. They can find it difficult to get back into a game once again. But if they can dictate the pace, if they're, you know, in control, Very, very fearsome team for sure, and a hard nut to crack on that CT side, most definitely. But yeah, look, I just wanted to run through and give a few basic thoughts and just show things off. It's a bit of an overview, you know, that it's not super deep, but trying to work my way through the content ultimately and just stream of consciousness with some of these. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. I suppose at the tail end, if I am to give my, you know, victors of each of these, for me, Ex-Winstrike here. I'm going to go with Apeks here, I think, Saw and Wisla. And then in terms of, I'll just call a winner. In terms of winning it, oh, it's hard, man. I think Ex-Winstrike, for me, would be the logical choice. Ex-Winstrike, maybe Wisla as a dark horse. So those are the two that you're getting in terms of winning. But look, pumping out the content, wanted to give my thoughts, wanted to just give a quick overview maybe for people that have not been following the regular season, to where we're at, to how teams are performing, how they're looking and whatnot. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Do be sure, once again, drop a sub, drop a comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree down below. And also be sure to check out my other video that gave the complete overview of, and it's a tier list, ultimately, of the teams getting into Season 36. But thank you very much for watching. I will catch you in the next video.